Alright, so before we begin, I know that I already have a video that horribly details the events following God of War 3, and I really feel like I didn't do too good of a job elaborating on how Kratos made it to Midgard, or how he still has the Blades of Chaos. A majority of what I'm about to say is pure speculation, so take what you will of that. In this video, I will be combining my own theories with two sources of what we know to be canon. One being the official novelization of the game, as it is just a more detailed take on Kratos and Atreus' journey. And the other canon source that we'll be taking a look at is Kratos' appearance in Shovel Knight that takes place during his journey to Scandinavia. I know, crazy. But it will all make sense before we're through here, I hope. So buckle up and prepare to maybe be informed. At the end of God of War 3, we know that Kratos stabbed himself with the blade of Olympus, and laid down laughing in a pool of his own blood, having finally ended the torture that is his life. Or so he thought. In reality, Kratos only remained there, waiting for a death that would never come. Based on these excerpts from the novel, we can see that Kratos realized that the gods would never allow him death by his own hand, so to spite them, he collected up his blades, determined to find a way to free himself of their terrible curse. We can obviously assume that when the book says that Kratos collected up his blades, means that he collected the Blades of Chaos. But where could he have gotten them from? What happened to the Blades of Exile? While this isn't explained at all, we can make a pretty simple guess. The Blades of Exile were lost, and Kratos probably made his way back to his former quarters as the God of War on Olympus, where he kept the Blades of Chaos on display as a monument to his sins after he reclaimed him from the corpse of Ares, and kept the blades as a reminder of why he hated the gods of Olympus and, more importantly, himself. Why would he grab these weapons? I don't know. Perhaps for the sake of familiarity, or more than likely due to his seemingly spiritual connection to them. Nonetheless, Kratos gathered his blades in his cloak and began to wander aimlessly, realizing that he was forever cursed to walk the earth as punishment for his horrible deeds. Alone in a world devoid of life after his cataclysmic war on Olympus, Kratos was left to the horrors of his mind. His existence of relentless killing accumulated a mountain of men who perished needlessly at his hands. Their screams clawed at his imprisoned soul. Kratos was haunted by the atrocities that he had committed with the blades that he carried, and so he wanted to be rid of them. At first, the God of War tossed the blades from the highest cliff, but a vicious wind swirled the steel upward to deposit them at his feet. The gods, it seemed, had delivered their edict, yet Kratos refused to succumb. Before we go any further, I want to discuss these gods that keep getting mentioned. Kratos killed most of the important Greek gods, we know this, but there are still quite a few that remain, including Athena, although in spectral form. So why can't we assume that some of the other gods that Kratos has killed also continue to exist as spirits? With what little godly power that they have left, they could be making Kratos suffer for what he did to them and to the world. Along with them, we still have some of the primordials, the creators of the world, still around. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's continue with our excerpt. Another image played across his mind. He cast the blades into a calm sea. His action induced such rage from the gods that a shipwreck ensued, washing him up on a black sand beach amid the flotsam. He lifted his head to find the blades leaning against craggy rocks, awaiting his arrival. Despite countless more failed attempts that drove him to the very brink of madness, the gods unfalteringly rejected every desire to be free. Okay, so here's where we're going to say that Kratos started his journey that ultimately ended with him settling down in Norway. Being that the ending of God of War 3 takes place atop Mount Olympus, and the highest cliff that Kratos tried to throw the blades from was more than likely the Suicide Bluffs, it's safe to assume that this is the starting point. I'd also like to remind you that the Suicide Bluffs overlook the Aegean Sea. After failing to throw the blades of Olympus off the Suicide Bluffs, we can say that Kratos looked out into the Aegean Sea and had the idea to sail as far away as he could allow himself to bear and throw the blades overboard. Pardon this bad use of Google Maps, but we're going to be referencing for this little part of the video. so we'll just place a marker here at Mount Olympus to set a rough starting point. From here, Kratos may have sailed south through the Aegean Sea. A good ways down, Kratos decided that he was at a good place to finally dump off the blades. But instead, he was shipwrecked and washed up onto the black beaches of Santorini. How he made it off of this island, I'll leave that up to you, but either way, Kratos probably made his way back to mainland Greece and began to travel north. In case you were wondering when Shovel Knight was going to enter the discussion, here you go. After an undetermined amount of time traveling north, Kratos encounters the Shovel Knight. When talking to the Shovel Knight, Kratos mentions Athena and asks her if she is putting him through yet another test. This statement could be very important. Perhaps Athena's spirit once again appeared to Kratos during his journey, claiming to know a way to end his curse. Based on this dialogue, Athena could have possibly been putting Kratos through many trials in an attempt to entertain herself with Kratos' futile efforts, or maybe to genuinely try to help him. During the battle against the Shovel Knight, Kratos is shown to also still be in possession of the winged boots of Hermes, the golden fleece, and the Nemean cestus. And if you look at the background during the fight, you can see a snowy mountain range surrounded by an equally snowy area. I know that this is reaching pretty far out there, but I'm going to assume that this mountain range is the Alps. This narrows the location of the battle to somewhere in one of 8 different areas, being France, Italy, Monaco, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, Slovenia, and Liechtenstein. I'm going to leave picking one of these places up to you. Upon being defeated by the Shovel Knight, Kratos gives the knight the gravedigger's shovel, which formerly belonged to a gravedigger from Greece that turned out to be Zeus. I'm not really sure as to why Kratos would have it, but okay. Same goes for, the Nemean cestus and all that. Having earned a mutual respect for each other, Kratos and the Shovel Knight part ways, with the knight bidding Kratos good fortune, to which Kratos responds that his fate lies elsewhere. This parting quote by Kratos can be interpreted as him saying that he needs to travel elsewhere to meet his fate, which would be ending his curse and finally becoming able to die. Between Kratos' encounter with the Shovel Knight and his arrival in Norway, it is not known how much time has passed, and all the accounts are left incredibly vague, so I'm not even going to make an estimate. But Kratos did indeed make it to his destination, intended or not, and was quickly discovered by beings only of that land. Kratos held a defensive stance, his back against a rock wall, his blades out to defend himself from a trio of yowling wolves twice his height. One black with verdant eyes, one white, and the third gray. The black beast seemed to be the alpha, assuming the most forward position. A beardless god of war, clad in the clothes of his life in Greece, slashed his blades of chaos to keep the predators at bay, but his actions failed to discourage their assault. Kratos realized that he needed to bring down at least one of the wolves if he hoped to survive their onslaught. The white wolf advanced as if on command. The movement revealed a woman behind the beast, clad in a long cloak and cowl obscuring much of her face. Her raised arms sent all 3 creatures airborne to attack. Kratos screamed with all the force he could muster, just as the black wolf ripped into his thigh to drag him away. Where the wolves drug him to, it is not known. It's probably best to go with him taking him further into the Norse world, thus leaving him stranded in Midgard. One thing is for sure though, these giant wolves are more than likely Fenrir and his son Skoll and Hati. But the identity of the woman that was handling them is unknown, as is her business being there. Here I go reaching again, but I am confident in saying that they were all sent there to retrieve Kratos, especially since he was prophesied to play a huge role in Ragnarok along with the 3 wolves. What happened between this and Kratos meeting Faye is also unknown, but they had ended up getting married and together they built the cabin that we see in the game. She insisted that they build their cabin in that precise location. She countered his every argument to build high on the ridge rather than the valley. After the cabin was finished, Kratos wrapped the blades in his Greek garb and placed them under his house, if we go by this excerpt from the novel when Kratos goes to retrieve the blades after Atreus falls ill. Kratos had concealed the blades beneath the floor of his house 5 decades ago, vowing to never take them up again. So, Kratos and Faye had been married for 50 years before the events of the game. This puts the amount of time that Kratos had spent in Midgard at least 50 years as well. but I would imagine that he had been there longer. There's probably so much more that happened between God of War 3 and the new God of War, and what I've discussed has barely scratched the surface, and I've probably missed a whole lot, if any of this is even plausible. Perhaps this video can be, used as a general idea as to what happened between the two games. Of course, not all of it is concrete proof, but the novel and even the Shovel Knight encounter can allow us to attempt to piece things together. With as large of a time gap as we've talked about, I can almost guarantee you that we will get a game that covers it. It may omit the Shovel Knight part for obvious reasons, but we will eventually know the full true story. So take all this with a grain of salt. Okay then, enough rambling out of me for now. I do apologize if I seem to be going a little overboard with a couple of these theories, and I encourage you to comment and let me know how I could have done better or if any of it makes sense at all. Thank you all so much for watching if you made it this far. Please leave a like or a dislike if you do feel inclined. As always, until next time.